The following information is intended for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice. The views expressed do not necessarily reflect those of A Rood Awakening International, nor this broadcaster. Should you choose to implement this information, please do so only with the assistance of a licensed medical professional. Neither the presenter, nor A Rood Awakening International, nor this broadcaster assume any responsibility for any adverse effects or consequences that may result.
What if everything you've learned about healthy eating and weight loss was wrong? What if science actually says something different than what you've been taught? What if fat is not the fiend it's been made out to be? And what if even your doctor didn't know any better? Today, pharmacist Billy Wease is going to teach you what your doctor was never taught in medical school. And he's about to give you a health awakening. And welcome to the Health Awakening. I'm your host, Scott Laird. We put our lives in the hands of our doctor, and most doctors want the best for their patients. It's why they got into medicine in the first place, to help people. However, what they learned in medical school is not everything. In fact, it may even be biased because whoever funds the school can have an influence on the curriculum. So, what was your doctor never taught about your health? I think you'll be surprised. Here to give us an inside scoop on what's missing is pharmacist and author of the book, The 21st Century Pharmacist, Billy Wease. Welcome, Billy. Welcome to the Health Awakening.
Thanks, Scott. Thanks.
Now, we've talked many times before about things that surprise people, like water and what enzymes can do, our little pudding experiment before, and things of that nature. So I think maybe the most surprising thing is what someone's doctor is not taught in medical school. So what is being taught in medical schools, and why is it wrong? What's missing here?
Well, I think, Scott, the main thing that medical schools and all medicine, pharmacy and so on, is reactive medicine. So in other words, you come with a problem, a high blood pressure, a high blood sugar, a heart condition, whatever, and we just react with drugs.
Okay. Rather
than trying to investigate and find out what the cause of that actual problem is, and then talk about lifestyle changes, supplements, all the things we've talked about, right waters and things, exercise, to try to correct that problem rather than just cover it up with a drug.
Now, as people know you as the 21st century pharmacist, you've introduced all these things, the enzymes, the water, et cetera. I think some folks might find it surprising to know that you as a pharmacist are saying these things, but we'll get into a little bit more later about why you decided to change your mind on things. But, this whole thing of just feeding a drug to a problem and, next running it like a conveyor belt in a medical field, wasn't always like that. In 1910, things changed, and all of a sudden, the holistic things became illegal. How did that all happen?
Yeah, Scott, unfortunately, some of the higher powers, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, kind of took over the pharmaceutical industries at the time, so to speak, and so they created what became the Flexner Report. And if you weren't a Flexner-approved medical school, they basically put you out of business.
Really?
They shunned you. And this is really where the quack, the chiropractor quack stuff came from. And by 1950, essentially, all these homeopathic and chiropractor schools and things were gone. They were put out of business.
Wow. And so now we're living with the outcome of that, and basically now everything's just a drug for whatever ails you.
Unfortunately, that is our first line of defense for almost everything, is that we just are prescribed a drug or given a drug with, we know, an average, if we remember from some of the other shows, 398 side effects on average. And we're not really fixing the problem. We're just kind of covering the symptoms in a lot of cases.
The side effects, which you just mentioned, I know that a lot of people don't realize something you brought out in one of our previous shows, was that if you have drug A that has 10 side effects and drug B that has 10 side effects, that does not equal 20 side effects.
No, absolutely. The University of Stanford School of Medicine research shows that those are basically exponential. We don't really know the number when we combine more than one drug to get, with another.
Wow.
So we don't have the ability and the time and the money to study exactly what happens. Whereas when we do what I consider lifestyle modifications, there's generally zero side effects, only upside.
Now, lifestyle changes. Let's get into that for a minute. So one of the examples of the myths that we've been taught from our doctors who learned it in medical school was that cholesterol is the cause of heart disease. And I think most people watching this show would go, well, yeah, that seems pretty obvious. Right. But it's not, is it?
Well, it's really not, Scott. It's just one of the players in what creates a heart attack or a heart issue. Actually, up to 75% of folks that are hospitalized for heart attacks have perfectly normal cholesterol. So that's not really what's driving it, although, again, with the drug industry having a drug that will reduce cholesterol, that became the villain. When it's really the high sugar and high insulin levels and inflammation that is creating the problems that lead to the heart disease.
So when someone's taking a drug for cholesterol and they're not addressing these other things, they're not really helping anything other than creating a false test result for their next cholesterol test.
Well, and that's what reactive medicine is, right? We can measure that their cholesterol went down, so we say that everything's okay, when they really probably haven't reduced their chance of heart attack. As a matter of fact, one of the side effects of the cholesterol drugs is that it can increase the risk of type 2 diabetes, which is the real culprit, the real underlying cause of heart disease.
Okay, so you just mentioned that's where we were going to go next with this, so that sugar is the real, well, diabetes, not sugar necessarily, but diabetes is the real culprit to everything else. Now, is that sort of like a precursor? If you got diabetes, it's a marker for lots of other things? Well,
it really is, Scott, and the problem is, again, I don't think we're measuring the right numbers. We don't look at the numbers. The CDC today actually admits that 50% of Americans have diabetes or pre-diabetes. Now, that's without measuring what I think is the most important number, fasting insulin. They go on to say that 64% of adults 45 and over have diabetes or pre-diabetes. And again, they're not measuring their insulin levels. So I believe that if we measured insulin levels, those numbers would be astronomically higher than the 50 and 64%. So yeah, when we're not looking at the right numbers, we're not even catching a lot of these folks that have these issues.
So when you're looking at the insulin levels, how easy is that to get a test for that?
I mean, it's really easy. It's the same blood draw where they're getting all your other numbers from, and it's really inexpensive too.
All they need to do is ask for it.
All they need to do, well, they can certainly ask. They may get some pushback, but if not, they can do it on their own without a physician's order at that point.
All right.
It's very valuable information, and we do that for a lot of folks.
All right. Well, speaking of valuable information, we're talking with pharmacist Billy Wease about what your doctor does not know. We'll be back with more from The Health Awakening. Stay with us. And welcome back to The Health Awakening. We were talking with our guest before the break, Billy Wease, about the tests that are easy to get, but your doctor may not think about, like fasting insulin and things like that, and how easy it is to get it. So now, when did you start to, you went through pharmacy school and all that, and you decided, yeah, this is not everything. There's something missing here. What prompted all of that?
Well, Scott, my grandmother, when I was about to finish pharmacy school, was diagnosed with cancer. And she went through the standard of care, and we didn't do any lifestyle changes, didn't know to do any, and she had a really poor outcome. And then as I was coming out of school and working, I kept seeing these same kind of outcomes that I just said, this is not what I got into pharmacy for. I wanted to see people get well. So it led me to go back to school and obtain a fellowship in metabolic and nutritional medicine. And that's really what I use today to help people get well and get off their prescription drugs in many cases.
Now, why do you think something like you took there is not in a standard medical school? Where's that disconnect?
I think that a lot of it comes from the fact that the pharmaceutical companies are funding a lot of the medical schools and pharmacy schools, and they're funding the researches, so a lot of it just comes from the fact that the folks funding it don't necessarily have a vested interest in people getting off their prescription drugs.
I hear you. So it's all whoever you pay to play. You pay for the curriculum, you get to have a say in that curriculum.
That's a good way to put it, I think, Scott. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, there's something interesting you have in your book here. It says, most doctors surveyed today list pharmaceutical reps and articles sponsored by pharmaceutical industries as their main source of information after graduation. So they're not going out there thinking like you did with a free mind. They're just basically going after what they learned in school.
Yeah, and a lot of it, Scott, is due to the way today's medical system works with the insurance control and these things. They don't have time. So they depend on these pharmaceutical reps and these articles written by the pharmaceutical companies and their researchers as to how they stay up to date. And it's just a system that it's like the big snowball going down the hill, right? Somebody's got to get behind it and start to push that snowball back up over the hill the other way, or we're going to continue down this same path.
It is a snowball indeed. I have a couple of friends who are physicians, and regardless of what they're in, even chiropractor versus dermatology and things like this, they're so busy during the day. They have so many patients, and yet the paperwork at the end of the day takes them into the night. When are they ever going to sit down and say, I'm going to read a medical journal and discover something new today?
Yeah, it's almost impossible for them to do, Scott, today.
Yeah, and that's where the saying, again, you mentioned in your book, see one, do one. Medical school trainers have that saying, see one, do one. What does that mean?
Well, I've had several doctors tell me that when they were going through rotations and they were interns and they would go into the hospital and start going through cases and be in, we'll call it Miss Jones' room. And they would go through the case, the physician would, and they would want to ask a question. And in some cases, they would even ask a question. And they would just kind of be ridiculed, like, don't ever ask me that question again. Just do what I say and learn from what I'm teaching you. And so it was almost like they felt like they were shut out from being curious and trying to say, well, is there a different way? Are there lifestyle changes? Or is it just cut and dry? So it was like, see what I do and do it. Kind of attitude.
And that's completely the opposite of how a naturopath, as I am, is supposed to go through things. When you see someone as a client, it's not just what ails you, here's a Band-Aid. It's let me look at your eyes, let me look at your skin, your tongue, what's your lifestyle like? What are your bathroom habits like? You have this litany of questions, and that's why when you go to somebody who's like a holistic practitioner, you end up spending 2 hours and maybe a 5-page questionnaire about your health so they can get to the bottom of things right from the outset. And I wonder if, as a pharmacist, are you even permitted to ask such questions? If someone comes to you for something, can you say, well, what's really going on?
Well, Scott, that's certainly what I do as a 21st century pharmacist. I sit down and typically we have at least an hour and a half conversation for the first visit. The first time we meet, I want to go through, I ask those questions, I find out what they want to accomplish and try to ask the questions that make the most sense to find out why they are where they are and how we can start to change those habits or those lifestyles so that they can then have a true health outcome, right? The optimal health, wellness, and fitness is what I call it.
Now, you're in the Charlotte area, and if folks are watching this around the country and not sure, let's say, they want someone just like you, they say, I'd like a pharmacist like that. Are there many folks doing like what you're doing in your profession?
Scott, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that they're not. I certainly haven't seen them, and I have some salesmen that do supplements and things that travel across the country that say they've never seen it. So there may be some. But we are in the Charlotte area, but I do phone consults and Skype and all these other technologies allows me to talk to people in LA just like you and I are sitting here. So it's pretty cool what we can do today.
And that's good because now you're reversing the backward thinking. And hopefully more people will be able to learn this from you. And after we come back from the break, we're going to talk about how you're doing that, because a couple of colleges are actually interested in having you teach their students, one of whom is actually in the studio with us today. So we'll get back to that in just a second. We're talking with Pharmacist Billy Wease about what your doctor does not know, and we'll come back with more from the Health Awakening. Stay with us. And welcome back to the Health Awakening. We're talking with pharmacist Billy Wease about what your doctor doesn't know, not because he doesn't want to tell you, but just because he doesn't know. And this is Billy's latest book called 21st Century Pharmacist. And in that book, Billy, you come up with a very interesting statistic here on page 26. I've got it earmarked here, that today the U.S. consists of less than 5% of the world's population, yet consumes how many of the world's pain medications?
70%.
70% of the world's pain meds.
Yeah. That's
incredible. And we see, I saw this on television recently where there was actually an opioid reduction commercial. Somehow the government has recognized that this is a big problem and that over 2 million Americans, according to your book, are addicted to opioids. That's so backwards. How do we get people off these things?
Yeah, it's going to be tough, Scott, because they're very addictive. I mean, they take parts of the brain, the dopamine receptors, and they light them up. So it's very pleasurable, and people get there before they even realize it. And then they feel like they have to have them, hence the addiction. And so it's tough to get people off. We have to have a plan. We have to think about lifestyle. We have to think about other ways to help control their pain. A lot of it is true pain that needs to be corrected. I think the biggest issue with it is that the manufacturers of many of these opiates told the medical community that they were not addictive and that they weren't going to be a problem.
Like cigarettes.
Exactly, like cigarettes. And now we have millions of folks that are addicted, and it's a very tough process to get them off.
Now, you are doing something personally to help not just folks that you come in contact with, but trying to teach the teachers or the future teachers to go out and say, hey, this is not the only answer. You have developed a program suitable for colleges of pharmacy. Tell us about what's happening there.
Yeah, so what I'm doing, Scott, is I'm really taking the OptiURX wellness program that I teach to the consumer, to the patient, and I am modifying it to teach it to pharmacy school students.
Now, you had approached a couple of schools. Did you think they were going to be receptive? What was your initial, when you call up and say, I bet they're going to say X?
I really told my wife, Beth, who's also a pharmacist, that this is probably a waste of time. But I was actually quite impressed that both were very open and said that they even felt like it was something that their students needed to learn.
Interesting. So even the folks running these schools are recognizing that there's a hole here. There's something that we're not teaching, and we wish we could, and maybe they just didn't have anybody to teach it.
Well, one of the things that I found interesting was that when I approached them with it and we went over what I envisioned this program looking like in a school, one of the questions that they both asked me was, we need you to teach it because we don't have anybody that can teach it. So I think that the trends in America are certainly going toward wellness, and they see that. And I was quite impressed with the fact that were very open. And I will actually begin this year teaching that in pharmacy schools.
Excellent. Now, so you're really, if there was no one else to teach it, that's got to feel pretty good that you're on the cutting edge of this.
Well, we'll see. I've never taught like this, so we'll see how it goes. I think it'll be a lot of fun to work with the folks in school, and hopefully we can just open some of their minds to the fact that there are other ways other than just reactive medicine.
So now, when you introduced this program, the folks in charge said, okay, we're going to do this, and they brought it out to the students. What was their class size recommendation, and what happened about how many people signed up?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. They called me and they said, hey, we have a class size limit for what you're going to teach of 20.
Okay.
But we've had 30 sign up. What would you like to do? I was like, well, let's do all 30 if y'all are in for it. So it was really popular.
Wow, so this is not like an underwater basket weaving course where
I hope not.
10 folks sign up and nothing is ever learned. But wow, so 30 signed up.
There seems to be a lot of interest.
That is excellent.
Yeah.
So that tells me that these young folks coming in, they've already recognized that what they're going to learn in pharmacy school is probably not all they really need and want to know, but they want to learn it from the other side of things, too.
I certainly hope so, because it's really practical advice. One of the things that I want to make this class is that it's what goes on in real life day to day. You see these people with these problems, and I think the reason that most people go into pharmacy school or into any medical profession is to help people get well.
Yeah.
And I hope that we're able to just be a small part in helping people be able to accomplish that.
Wow. So you start this fall,
Yes.
the fall of 2019.
Correct.
And very good. So hopefully if people see this a couple of years from now, they'll be in many more schools.
Yes.
Is there any vision for you to have this expanded and to have teachers to go to many places where you can't go?
Well, sure. There's always the vision and the dream of being able to teach this not only in the pharmacy school students, but into the PA students, the medical students, the NP students, the nursing students, wherever it needs to be taught, because this is wellness that any medical profession, I believe, could benefit from. So certainly that, and making this into a continuing education program for the physicians is maybe a next step.
That would be great.
Yeah,
because they're required to have continuing education hours every year.
Correct.
Right.
So for the pharmacist and for the physician. So that's maybe the next step that I'll look at.
So when do you think they'll see the light on this? Any estimations?
Well, there's an old saying, Scott, that you don't change the medical profession, that people just have to die. Now, I don't necessarily know that that's true, but I think the way that it changes is with more and more just people in America saying we're tired of this system, we're not getting better, and we want to look for people who are helping us get well.
Excellent.
And I think that forces the medical profession to start looking outside the so-called reactive medicine box.
Indeed. So now if people don't have access to this, watching this, where can they go online to find out what you already offer to the consumer?
So OptiYou, OptiYourX.com is the website. 855-OptiYou is the phone number.
Okay.
And so we do consults, we have the book, we have supplements that I formulated. I mean, all kind of wellness programs.
And you have 5 definite pillars. There's a whole system built around it, and it's been proven in helping lots of people understand. So
that's correct.
All right,
yes,
Billy,
sir.
thank you for joining us
Thanks,
today on the Health Awakening.
Really enjoyed it.
Our guest today has been author and pharmacist Billy Wease, talking about what your doctor doesn't know. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And thank you again for joining us on The Health Awakening. Our guest has been Billy Wease, pharmacist Billy Wease, and author. You can find his book, The 21st Century Pharmacist, right here, and his 5-pillar drug-free natural wellness program at OptiYourX.com. Billy, what are those 5 pillars of health?
So God-given quality foods,
Okay.
the world's best nutritional supplements, water made from a medical device, science-based exercise, rest and recovery.
That's simple.
It's pretty simple, Scott.
It sounds like just what the things we should be doing anyway, doesn't it?
Common sense things.
All right. Thanks again for joining us. All right. So thanks again. We'll see you next time for another Health Awakening. Thank you for joining us today on The Health Awakening. You can catch the replay of this episode and see our complete show schedule at healthawakening.tv. For more information about our guests today and all they have to offer, please visit their website on the bottom of your screen. And please remember, the information you saw today is for educational purposes only. It is not medical advice, nor do the views expressed reflect those of this broadcaster. Should you choose to implement this information, please do so only with the assistance of a licensed medical professional. Neither the presenter nor this broadcaster assume any responsibility for any adverse effects or consequences that may result. Thank you.